We can try to enter the Guinness Book of World Records.
Yeah, just in case I may have to use the facilities for a few minutes, 2 minutes, I may have to dash out.
Yeah, you can take your time. All right, let's see what we got here. Yeah, it's coming on. I'm going to play the intro just so we can buy a little time. Here we go.
Yeah, go for it.
Welcome, everybody. I guess we're welcoming you to what has organically become Franco Friday. Somebody put that up there. I've seen it 3 or 4 times. So, yeah, we were just talking before the show. Let me just make a couple of announcements. We do have the Soulogy Fest 28th through 31st of May in Sedona. And we have set the intention that Franco and Kimberly will be there. Franco will be speaking each and every day that we're there for the 3 formal days. And we're going to have 1 free day on the day after. So I also wanted to say, if you haven't seen Advancing Consciousness, the series that they've put together, it is a very comprehensive, varied, wide range of topics that affect our experience here. And I find it extremely invaluable. And on that note, I just watched the 70th episode, which is not to be confused with the 70th video in the series. I think there's over 100, but it was called The Relationship Effect. And there were 2 parts of it that really stood out to me because I thought it really spoke to the energy of how we're processing stuff, what we're able to understand and actually embody, and also what kind of effect it's having on our connections, on our relationships of all kinds, in the real time as a human who is transforming and expanding. So on the first part of it is where at the 30-minute mark, I believe, or 32-minute mark, you start talking about what our collective makeup is in this now moment. Not so much out there in the multidimensionality, but you actually bring it to the human level and you say there's the mind, and then there's the ego, and then there's the body, and a couple of more categories. And then you had a kind of a grouping of them, which was what you called the active consciousness.
Correct.
Okay. And I thought it would be, I personally thought that 15 or 20 minutes was one of the best explanations real time of what it really feels like, what we're working with, how it works. You really broke it down. I thought it was just incredible. But if you could you start us out by just kind of giving a summary of that, particularly where that puts us in terms of your categorization and grouping of those aspects that were in that active consciousness. Mm-hmm. Because I thought that was really, really helpful in terms of not judging myself and how I'm thinking, oh, that's what that is, and being able to attribute to that what part of me within that grouping was doing the talking, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize our makeup, because we are made up of many facets of expressions within one unit. Everything comes together to make what we call the human experience, the human expression. And the human is not limited to just a physicality, because the makeup of it encompasses amazing amount of everything that exists. Because I'll even push it a little further if you're okay with all of that.
Yes, please.
So the breakdown, when we're looking at it, okay, we relate that we're a physicality. Okay, a lot of people have that relationship that, okay, I'm a physicality. But even though that we relate ourselves as a physicality, we don't realize how much more of that physicality exists. That's even before we put the other parts in. Because this physicality is an expression of what we call Gaia itself. But I'm going to go deeper here, because the whole makeup, the whole history, the whole design of an axis of consciousness that exists in Gaia, which is also made up of all the different habitants that may have come and gone, all the retooling and so forth, because all of that is maintained as a hard drive. But we also have the makeup that expands through the whole solar system, and then expands to the galaxy and the universe, all feeding through this physicality. Now, the physicality has a very deep innate consciousness. It has its own consciousness, its own capacity to create a pocket of energy and consciousness and so forth that is always ready to be expressed in one way or another. Now, the reason the other parts come in is to actually accentuate it, because what I'm going to explain to you is the body itself not only has so much to offer, but it's also learning from the makeup, which I'm going to explain what the makeup is. And I know I did talk about part of it in the last episode. So the human entity is the earthbound soul. Okay. What does that contribute? Well, the human entity itself is basically the whole experience of each and every incarnation from day one of the retooling. That means 15,000 years of incarnation. Okay. And each of those incarnations has had different gender physicalities come in at different times, different collective energies, different collective dance, and so forth. Plus, it has added on not only experiences, but also skill sets and opportunities to use those skill sets.
So would you say that the human entity in and of itself has its own lineage, and that the particular soul that we are right now may not have been on that journey the entire time, but has access to the experience of it through the human entity?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. So the thing is, it has that whole lineage, it has all that experience, and the experience is all through the whole human makeup, and also the evolution of Gaia, all the sentient beings and so forth, because it has experienced it. It has experienced it in its surroundings, the sharing and so forth. And it has a different way of perceiving it and utilizing it, based differently from what the body does, because the body is also going through all of this process. Okay. Yeah. But it has a different spin or viewpoint of it in that journey of, say, that 15,000 years. So, and also beyond that, because it also has the archives and so forth of the history of, say, the Atlantean, the Lemurians, and beyond and beyond and beyond, right? Because there has been many, many, many incarnations. So, or generations and series of physicalities that have come onto the planet. And there were times where there was nothing specifically logged in for planet Earth. It was just a visiting planet of sorts where, beings were coming in different forms and just interacting. And that was a long time ago, but it was in that. So the human entity doesn't have that history, but it has a really refined history, a refined skill set of what we refer to the human experience. Okay. But it learned from the body, and the body is upgraded through that process. Now, the next level that comes in is what a lot of people call the soul. The soul, because the human entity is also a soul, but it is a soul with a specific signature, but it is earthbound, meaning that it actually only reincarnates on the earth. The reason is not to start at ground zero each time, because the human entity carries all of the experience that has been gained through the human experience part, so that another combination doesn't have to start from zero. It can just continue to grow accordingly, because that's where the other factor comes in. Because when we're talking about the other soul, the multidimensional soul, that is the soul that comes onto the planet that is multidimensional, meaning that it can incarnate and has incarnated on different planets, in different dimensions, have gone in parallel worlds at times, and have incarnated in or stayed in non-form and so forth, that may, like you said, may not have had that much experience on planet Earth, or zero experience of planet Earth. So when it does come in, it would be like a fish out of water, but it relies on the human entity and what the body has to share to create that alignment. And that's before we start to create what we call the overall consciousness, which we call the mind. Go ahead.
The mind. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you. I just want to make sure I got all this. So these three, the body, the human aspect, and the multidimensional soul, I can see them coming together. And from that comes what we would call mind. Then you've got a couple other things, ego and that. And then, of course, leading to what is active consciousness, because I can see that's where you're going. I can see how this can be very helpful. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the mind itself is the makeup of the overall consciousness. So it's the active consciousness, okay? That is taking input from the body, human entity, the soul, and also whatever it's exposed to from its surroundings and interactions and so forth. It also, will also tap in through the third eye, using as a tool, which is the levels of other souls that are existing, and then create an active consciousness of how it actually perceives and sees and interacts with the world. Now, the ego is a software program that also has an operating system that is also creating a inverted version of life, because the ego does, that software is connected to all the other softwares of ego or artificial intelligence. So it's evolving too. So it's not starting from ground zero either. So at that point, it also interjects into that consciousness. Now, we've gone through stages where we've had so much intensified that polarized, inverted world, that the ego actually became more the facilitator to cloud over or actually create more control over the active consciousness. Now, the subconscious is actually the storage part of consciousness, which is basically storing experiences, but it also stores labels. But the labels have to be applied in the active consciousness. So if you have a belief of something, you have to adopt the belief and start to kind of experience that belief. And then that becomes a storage of that idea that you are that belief. And that's stored in the subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. So then it becomes, anything in the subconscious mind becomes the default of sorts, where you use that as a reference point. Oh, this is who I am because of that, because of that label that was applied to. So that is the makeup. But the thing is, we went through a fragmentation process of sorts because of everything that was happening, that the active consciousness basically kind of went through a process where it was utilizing more of what it was seeing in the external world as a feedback and how to create to connect with that, and also what it was streaming through the ego, and kind of lost. And this is why a lot of people have to focus into their higher self, because it lost the multidimensional soul input, not totally, but reduced it tremendously. And also the, what people call a gut feel, the intuitive part, going into the human entity part also reduced that. And then the connection to the body, because the body has a lot can offer.
So it's a whole another level of multidimensionality. It sounds like where your energy is headed, like as I follow your work, as it gets closer and closer to real time, like to convergence, is the mastery might end up being in the moment how we choose and discern and intuitively, innately know what voice to follow. I guess we're creating one voice in all these earthbound multidimensionality aspects.
Yeah, see, the thing is, Todd, the purpose of this human experience, we call the human experience, was to keep everything active, live, and online. Meaning the active consciousness was constantly communicating with the body, constantly communicating with the human entity and also the soul. And also through that communication was any and all advancements that the body would receive through all its connection through Gaia and the connection to everybody. And we're not even talking Gaia alone, but every human body, physicality, everything that it learned, it would be streaming through each person. The human entity, which is also connected to the cluster collective human entity, everything that it was learning was also sharing to that overall active consciousness. And the multidimensional part, if we're looking at the multidimensional soul, I've mentioned this before, but I will say it again in a little bit more detail possibly, is that multidimensional soul is not isolated. It is connected, yes, to a twin soul. It's connected to the oversoul at this point in time. That is also connected to many, many other souls, which we call soul family. And they're all actively experiencing, advancing, and sharing. So all of that's coming into it. And so when all of that is in alignment, then the active consciousness is not bound by the subconscious memory or even the external, because the thing is, the external, to be honest with you, so that you understand, the external was supposed to be just a reflection that we looked at as we were modifying it, upgrading, and say, okay, this is what it looks like. Let me experience it, and now upgrade it some more. Experience it, upgrade some more. Rather than the way it's been working, where we're creating from all these inverted stuff and all this AI stuff and everything else that's been in place for a long time, is that we disconnected from all of that. We were using the screen how to see things, but then our active consciousness was actually being overridden, not only by the ego, but overridden by what we were seeing and exposed to. So that the active consciousness was using a resource that was kind of recycled and only allowed certain access point. And to the degree we lost all those connections to almost like it didn't even exist. And that's when you go into converted 2D, 1D state where none of that actually exists, because now you're just your conscious, your overall consciousness of the mind operating system now is infused with only one access point, which is basically the world.
I'm giggling because I'm thinking to myself, God, what a brilliant idea. I think we were just trying not to get bored.
In a way, yes, but it can get boring when you're recycling the same, and that's what we're doing right now. And this is one of the stimulations that we're having, because it's not only that. When you look at the world the way it is, it's changing very slowly. It really possesses us to believe there's such a restriction, that we have no freedom, that in one way or another, this is all we have to play with. And that, in fact, some of us get so deep into it that there's nothing but what we're experiencing. Like you're denying you're not even open to any level of what we call higher self or communication to body or anything of that nature. And then you're also negating all other aspects of ourselves that are not only on the planet, but off planet. Basically, anything in the solar system, the galaxy, the universe, we lose connection to all of that. And thinking this is the only, and this is why religions, and a lot of them have flourished, because, okay, there's that one up there, and there's only you, and this is what we're going through, and this is the way it is, and you got to follow these rules and whatever else, right? So it was a real bit of a con job, but in a sense, it was a pretty interesting experience.
Either some group, whoever was behind the initiative, is either going to be very loved or not when it's over.
When we have a deep appreciation, all of it is loved, but at the same time, we also see obsolescence, and this is what's activated much of what's going on right now, because living a life or experiencing a life. Because why would we create this playground? Yeah, okay, we came here to play and experience and whatever else, but really, we want to really use everything to our disposal that we've already aligned to make use of, right?
Right.
Rather than staying in that,
put it into action within yourself.
Yes, action. And the thing is, we have a lot of capacity, amazing capacity. You call the human the hero. Well, the human itself, when you look at it, has such possibilities, such capacities that, even our own mind is mind-boggled because we never extended it to open it fully. Maybe the first 5,000 years, but even then we were just taking baby steps because we were just getting used to it because everything was new. But for us to be able to see what we haven't scratched the surface. Let's even put it that way. We haven't scratched the surface what the human can do, what the human can experience, what the human has to offer of all existence.
That's right. That's right. Anything we know of, we can do. Any Greek god, any supernatural. I mean, it's true. And I don't know. I mean, it's a brilliant disguise, this whole trip, but I can absolutely 100%, 1,000% appreciate it, even though I giggle about it. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So when you were doing this last one I was talking about, the relationship effect, and you were talking about what we were talking about earlier, is there a distinction between the mind, what we call the mind, and the active consciousness? And it sounds like mastering all those things might become something that would be maybe more understandable, something that we could apply. It just feels like new territory to me, like even taking into my field all those things that you talked about and saying, wow, I'm not just hearing, these multidimensional aspects. There's some stuff real close to me that I've been missing that are talking, and this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's many more people getting to a point where they're accessing more of themselves. They're sharing amongst each other. That's already a great input of sharing that's happening to kind of stimulate the reconnection that we have, underway at this point in time. So, just even a discussion of this nature is already creating a powerful realignment within ourselves. Our relationship with every aspect of ourselves changes the relationship of what we experience the world in every way. And then went in deeper into also the relationship with one another and so forth, because again, we can't say we're just the island as much as we're everything. Why did we create multiple facets of ourselves? Why would we say, well, I want to be just one human expression. Let me play here by myself with just the sentient beings. Well, that's fine and dandy, but that gets boring. So the choice was to create multiple versions of ourselves with slightly different signatures, with slightly different viewpoints, and also paths, so that when we are interacting with one another, there is a beautiful sharing. That's why relationships came about, where what we're talking about other aspects of ourselves, meaning other humans, and the relationship actually created a coherent opportunity of growth and multiple facets of expressions, meaning you can go through a journey of life and you can learn a lot, you can experience, but when you're interacting with someone, you're also seeing through their eyes, you're also sharing amongst each other, you're also creating experiences that you couldn't do solely because you have other interaction. Like, for example, you and Morgan, I mean, you could have done a lot of things by yourself, but there's so much more you can do because Morgan's in your life, because you connect with other people doing the shows. The fact that you connect with other people in groups or anyone that you meet, they're all facets of you, and each one's a sharing. And the sharing is not even just what you communicate, but just how you're in each other's presence, the energies. And each time that even takes place, we're also expanding. Even if you're not connected, the fact that we are all on the same plane together, it all is playing a role. And this is why the thing is, now relationships has been taught, the way that the systems have been projected, that relationships are not really allowing yourself to be yourself. In fact, you have to be kind of melded with everybody else, and you're basically adopting versions. So what it's doing is taking the spectrums or the potentials of each individual, and you're meshing it together, and neither one could express fully because they're intertwined. Like I was saying, this whole idea coming to relationship, well, it's a give and take. It's what do you call it? 50-50. But there's another word where you're not allowing yourself to be yourself. And the thing is too, the fact that if we're going to be together, we have to please each other, or we have to do it. So that actually impedes the growth and the expansion of what we really had the intention to come together in the first place. Now, of course, sometimes even playing that role will push buttons or whatever else, or get you to the point where you get to a saturation point and say, no, relationships is not worth it. But the thing is, it's not that the relationship is not worth it. It's the game that was played in the relationship, made out of that old construct. When you allow, see, Todd, when you are yourself, Morgan's yourself, everybody's themselves, and then you do a nice little dance and exchange, and you may want to do something that that Morgan loves, but you're doing it because you want to do it, not because you want to get brownie points or you do it because you love to do it. You like to see her smile. You love to see her, having that experience, vice versa. But at the same time, you're still being that uniqueness that you are, and Morgan's the uniqueness that she is. And then with the communication, collaboration, sharing, and so forth, you're learning from each other. Yeah, you may push your button sometimes or whatever it is, but that's only assisting to bring up any codes and so forth that, old programs and belief system we want to let go. Now, is it exclusive that it has to be an intimate relationship, or it has to be like a relationship that you may have, or I may have, or others may have to grow? No, relationships are not defined by that. People can decide that they want to be with each other more exclusively for whatever duration that may be. It could be permanent, could be, permanent, never permanent, but at the same time, long term for a whole life stream. But at the same time, relationships can be a movement. Different people come into your life, like you've had, I've had, others have had, other people come into your life, and also just friendships and whatever else and so forth. But it's always open. This is the thing, because we dwarfed relationships to the degree, say somebody goes to their family, goes to a family gathering. If everybody's themselves, can you imagine having 10, 15, 20 people all being themselves,
Mm.
opening and communicating with each other without trying to say, you got to fit in my box or you got to believe my story or anything of that nature, but just a beautiful exchange energetically through communication, through experience and so forth, rather than say, hey, you want to come in my group? We all have to think the same, act the same, and so forth. We all have to carry the same energy. That wouldn't exist. Could you imagine the growth that you have, and the freedom?
Everybody's an independent, free universe
Yes,
doing their
and
own
the
thing.
freedom that you have. Like, it's basically an accentuated version of when you have a gathering. You know, when you have a gathering, say, Soulogy Fest that's coming up, Soulogy Fest. What happens? People are coming from all over and they're being themselves and they're exchanging with each other, sharing with each other, and so forth. Wow, dynamics that is created there. Everybody's blossoming and blossoming and expanding. But if somebody came there and says, okay, if you want to come here, this is how the game is played. You cannot be yourself. We all have to think the same. You got to believe in what everybody says or one person says or anything of that nature. And now everybody's just like dwarfing themselves. And that's not how it works. And that's what a lot of people have done in relationships and families and work and whatever else. And that's the thing we're dissolving. So that
I think this is why I resonated so much with your episode 70 and this subject and the other one beforehand is because not so much the content, but certainly the content, but almost like the timing. And I don't mean just for myself. What I heard in that presentation was an energy of this is happening now. We're starting to think about these things now. We're experiencing these things now. It's like a new, higher level, more, easy path. I don't know what you want to call it, ascension, whatever you want to call it. But it's like it's coming into the human consciousness, what you call the active consciousness. And I was just so, impressed by that energy of what you created, the imagery that you created, because it's almost like this is the operating system. Mm-hmm. Or the new operating system, or this operating system was birthed. And so we have these elements in it. And like the mastery of those elements has just like went to the top of my priority list. Like if I can understand what I am at that level, then I can operate to a greater levels of efficiency, in my experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing is too, your active consciousness is very closely connected to your what we call the organic matrix, and you have to understand the organic matrix shares, and the organic matrix learns from us because it's an active intelligence, and it is an active way to support the human evolution, and so the active consciousness has a really close connection to that. And I didn't even bring that up in the thing. And it just reminded me as you were talking. But so, the thing is, the whole thing about any form of relationships at this point in time, we're bringing it to its true state. And because again, relationships, even with your children or siblings, and I talked about it in episode 70, where, it is an open platform where you're learning from the kids and the kids are learning from you because, listen, they have bodies that have been around for 15,000 years. They have human entities that have been incarnating and have amazing skill sets they're ready to offer. You have a multidimensional soul coming into play, and you have an active consciousness that's kind of aligning all of that and all its other connections. And you're saying, well, just because it's in a small package now, I have to mold them. You're going to share certain experiences and so forth while the package is going through the expansion process, but you don't demise it or diminish it. That's the right word. Diminish the fact that because they're in a small package that they have nothing to offer. I mean, I'm sure many, many parents have seen, especially the kids now, they're even turned on even more, where they're actually learning. And a lot of times these kids come in way more advanced than what the parent may have been. And because of not so much social conditioning yet, at that point in time, kind of represents more of that freer state of play and the freer state of imagination and so forth. All of that is much more available. So, this thing about, when we get to see the full perspective of really what's going on, it really accentuates things in a powerful way. Because Todd, this change that we're doing on the planet right now heavily relies on all of us.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing is, it's ready to be brought in huge leaps of upgrades. I have people, and I'm sure you've had other people say certain things and so forth, and even your own observation is, people are bringing in and say, well, when's this going to change? When are we going to be out of this scenario? When, these resources come into place? When are we not going to have any more of this control structures and so forth? And the answer is, it's up to us, because we're the ones that can change any and everything. And it's designed that way. We have to understand it's designed that way so that we become more empowered. But it's not only just the empowered part. While we're doing it, we're accessing more of our resources, accessing more of our capabilities, accessing more of our true design. This is the thing. Because if it's done for us, we don't use those skills. We don't bring it back online. That's the thing. And the thing is, from a soul perspective, it's saying we don't want it done by us. The deceptional part, which is just kind of part of the play, is the ego says, no, we're too far gone. And the systems and everything else is saying we have to have the savior. No,
Right.
Some people put the savior in some religion. Some people put the savior on the government. Some people put on the savior of, this shadow stuff or stuff that's in the background that's, working on the background to come and fix it and save us and whatever else. But the thing is, there is no saving. It's a matter of us aligning and doing what we do. And that is that powerful state of ourselves, bringing that into alignment. And the thing is, it's not just one individual, because if it was only one individual, even the one that wrote the freaking code, I would have already done it.
But the cool thing about it is and I think a lot of people are catching on to this, and that is that we can control it all from controlling ourselves. I don't mean controlling ourselves, but getting on top of ourselves, going deeper, integrating, zero pointing. And like you said, as we do that, these higher level skills and abilities come on board. And we can utilize that from, our central point to actually manifest, the effects of being able to reach that.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about self-mastery, it's really using your active consciousness to be really, really selective of where you put the focus. So the thing is,
okay, there you go.
Anything that feels like old and is regenerated of what we are seeing, then we can make an active choice. That's not where I'm going to put my focus. And I'm going to put my focus on something that I'm feeling new and aligns with me more, because that then shifts from one pattern response or choice point to something more expansive. So the mastery is really paying attention, being the observer, and readjusting your focus point, and also even the resources you receive. Because sometimes we feel, okay, you can't, let's put it this way, you cannot rely on the mainstream projection and the existing systems to tell us what the new world will look like. We really have to go outside of that. We have to say, well, that's the old world. And you're not denying it, but you're saying that's the old world. I'm not going to support this. I want to actually create something new. Now I have to tap into it. Now there's many like ourselves and others that are sharing, higher evolutionary consciousness and so forth, which will allow us to kind of trigger more of our memory, and our active consciousness starts to shape accordingly. So then we're doing, because if you want to change anything in any part of your life, you can't continue focusing on how it was created.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and you can't demonize it either. You have
No.
to say, okay, great, perfect, designed it, was awesome, but now what do I want to create? And
Well,
and you bring that in.
yeah, it's back to the title, the relationship effect. It's not just a relationship with your partner or people or business or whatever. It's a relationship with the reality itself. So, what you're saying is leaving behind what we've known, basically. What we've known for what we are, creating or stepping into, however you put it a minute ago. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And it's a very personal thing. And there's really nothing that can stand in your way but your own, your own unconsciousness or unwillingness to stay on top of your stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, the stuff that we've known, that's what we've been exposed to and we've played with. But when we're tapping into true knowing, it's expansive.
Yeah.
And that's when we're tuned. This is why for us, it's not about changing our beliefs. That is kind of still the old construct. It's never changing your beliefs, because beliefs are adopted ideas that we use for a temporary period of time. What we're accessing is true knowing. Knowing that is not stagnant. Beliefs are stagnant. They come and go. But knowing is an ever-evolving, an ever-expanding knowing of your essence and your capacities, and also bringing that to light in your reality, in your experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's even like like you said, you don't stay attached to it, the old, and but at the same time, you don't damn it. It's almost like that's there, which is no linear, so it's now. I'm just choosing to go to another timeline. You could say it that way. You could look at it that way. It's the same thing you're describing in the personal process that's happening. It's that we're just moving from one, more aligned frequency to myself, whether it be a person or a place or a thing, and moving away from one that we don't grow from anymore. That place of being yourself, I guess, is another way to put it. That place of being yourself, because in that old world, you're not being yourself. You're being either something that you believe you are that you're not, or else.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So the thing is, the biggest distraction, one of the biggest distractions we can have, is when we're looking at our life and saying, okay, I'm looking at my, how could I say? Like you said, if you're judging or damning or anything of that nature, what you have experienced at this point in time, your focus goes into what happened, what shouldn't have happened, or whatever you believe at that point in time. Your capacity to access something outside of that greatly diminishes, and you're using up a lot of resources. Yep. So if you're looking at your life and you have judgment about it, or you're looking at your life and you see your life as, oh, it's not ideal. Ideal to what? It doesn't matter. You could say, well, it's not ideal to where I'm looking at right now. That's great. Let me redesign it, and then put the focus on what resources can I use to redesign it, and leave the rest behind. The old is the old. You just leave it there. I mean, that was a great experience. That's it. From a higher perspective, when you go into that connecting with yourself, where you're actually quieting down the judgmental part of the ego mind, and you're not using the reference of what the world keeps telling you. And when I say the world, I'm just talking about the collective consciousness in the sense of what is being streamed, because there's multiple levels of collective consciousness. There's the projected one that we're still supporting, which is all inverted, that we're still playing with because we're keeping it alive, not that it exists. But then we have the other collective consciousness that we already created, which is another layer, which is all the people that are becoming more conscious of their grander aspect of themselves. So if we're just focusing on that older consciousness and keeping that alive, then that impedes us, and it always becomes part of the foundational creation of something new, and it uses up a lot of resources. Now, let me give you an idea. Let me give you something to share. When you are putting your focus on the old world or this inverted world, it sucks the living daylight out of you. It basically sucks up your energy. It's like a sponge. It is like a, what did people used to call it? Energy vampire or something like that. I can't remember what the name they used to call it. But when you're tapping into that higher consciousness, it actually re-energizes you. It's not sucking energy, it's adding energy. It's adding life. The other one sucks the life force out of you and only leaves you just enough to play the game in that inverted world. So you feel powerless, you feel restricted, you feel that the system has to be there to protect you. The system has to control you, where the other one doesn't do that. Yeah. It's the opposite. Because it is there. So those two levels of consciousness I was just talking about. So the old world consumes you. The new world energizes you.
Yeah, expands you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, there's, shift gears a little bit. There's some people like yourself in their own way that kind of pick up the intel, the collective intel, a little bit ahead of the present, that the trajectories of what they're talking about is come mid-May, everything changes. Like there's another, spike into I guess a potential existence where the reciprocation of the universe, the instant manifestation, the magic and the alchemy really can pick up at that point on an individual basis and maybe otherwise. That's kind of a summary of what I can put together with 3 or 4 or 5 different streams that I've read, one of them being yours. Can you give us any hint as to if that aligns with what you're seeing?
Yes. The thing is, too, it depends on the channel that you're going to be on.
Okay.
If your main focus is on the old world, you're going to feel intensities and whatever else, but you'll still be very deep seeing that old world. And in fact, that old world will feel even tighter for you. If you are in the evolving channel, the advanced channel, then yes, it's going to do exactly what you just said. You're going to feel freer and also be able to align more easily to kind of bring things together to support that new stage of yourself or that new version of yourself emerging. So the way it looks right now, April and May, at least to about the middle of May, okay, at this point, may look even more chaotic for the individuals that are still putting a lot of attention on the screen of the old world and interpreting and bringing in that is my reference point of what change is about. Then it's going to be others at the same time will notice more of a disconnect. So basically the next month and a half, pretty well, almost 2 months, you're going to see even more polarization, but you're going to also experience a disconnect. You almost like you say, okay, the old world can play where they are, but I'm going to connect with the collective, because there is a collective. It's a smaller collective, but it's a more powerful collective that has already seen that world that is more aligned. So once that point comes through, there's going to be a little bit more clarity on both screens, but the ones that are most that have been working and focusing on that higher, newer state of being will actually see even more changes occurring. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done from now to the end of 2022. Okay, in the sense of completing and purging as much as possible. I don't know how far I'm going to go here, but I'll let it go.
Yeah. Do it.
So there's going to be a lot more requirement and push for purging of the 1D, inverted 2D, inverted 3D, inverted matrix, and ego operating system that has to occur from now till the end of 2022, because the plan is, and everything is aimed for that, and we're governing. It could go a little shorter, it could go a little longer, but really that's kind of what the cutoff point we put in is for us to be able to fully embody organic 3D and organic 5D in the sense where we're not going to have a reference point of that inverted stuff. Now, during that period of time, we're going to have souls that are going to leave because they don't want to be part of it, and other drop-ins may come in. There's going to be bodies that will come out of equations, meaning dying and so forth. Some will be using some of the instruments being offered right now. Others will use other instruments that will be offered. There will be a lot of the other ones that are not going to be interested in sticking around as physical forms, that they will just no longer appear on the screen any longer. So you may not see a death process, but you'll see no longer existence. And others will have what we call a death process. But who and what and when and all of that stuff in between will be decided, because there's going to be ones that are saying not interested, and then another soul come in and say, well, okay, we'll renew the journey or whatever it is. So
far out, man. This is cool.
That's how everything's been constructed as us to do that. It's really relying on us, though. It's not done for us. It's relying on us.
Yes, I get that. And I get from what you're saying that if we just used January 1, 2023 as a marker, and I know everybody wants to, be done with this. But it sounds like there's a whole lot of work to be done between now and then on a personal level. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like the opportunity to go deeper, and then as a result, create more.
Yeah, and the amount of work will depend on how deep you're still in that web of the old construct, where you're basically working in the unconscious. Some of us have been on this journey for a long time, so there's going to be less to be done, and many of us are so close to it because we've already shifted a lot of the old world out of us. Okay, so we can look at the world. It doesn't matter what they mandate. You see, you look at it and say, well, I can play with little bits and pieces of it, but it doesn't govern me. It doesn't have any power over me. But we're already envisioning this new world within ourselves. We're already seeing that we're much more than this physical expression that we've had up to this point in time. Because even our physical expression, it's like this. Okay, Todd, I'll give you an example. You got a projector. People that remember what projectors are like, you have a projector, right? You got the film, or in this case, video tape, or whatever you call it. So we're projecting the human experience, but is it really just full projection, or how many filters do I have in front that actually are filters that reduce certain spectrums of light, and also certain capacities of seeing certain layers on the screen. So now we're looking at the screen, but we're not seeing the full screen. We're only seeing, so I'm referring that your personal screen, our personal screen, everybody's personal screen, saying, what do I see in the world? Is it crystal clear, or I have to look at these filters? What are these filters? These filters are adopted ideas, perception, and so forth, but also what we've maintained as a filter because we're using the old world to kind of filter it because we're afraid to see it in its true color, when the fear is false. The fear is superimposed, saying you don't want to see what it really looks like, because if you see what it looks like, you won't have interest in the old world. But they don't say that part. That part's not being relayed. You don't want to see the real world because This is why this whole idea of be afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
It's plugged in. That's a plug-in. That's not our true nature. The unknown is exciting. The unknown is adventurous. It's like I want part of that because I don't want to know what's coming up. I want to be part of it and navigate with it. It's like going on a ride. You know every single bump and ride and whatever part that you're going to go. The first time it's always more exciting because you don't know what it's going to look like and how it's even going to feel. Type of thing. And that's really our design because the ride's always growing anyways. But so that's the thing. So depending on how many filters we have and how much we're still referring to the old world, because if we're still holding on to the old world and the old relationships that we have, and I'm talking about relationships to facets of ourselves or illusionary projected aspects of ourselves, then it's going to feel, and it's going to take more work, but it's going to feel hard. It's going to be bumpy. Let's put it this way.
Well, I mean, if we're going to reach a point, if I understood you correctly, or at least if we're on target, give or take, that in the first day of 2023, we won't have a reference point of the old anymore. It would just seem to me like we'd have a lot. We have our work to do. Or don't take your eye off the ball, or just keep
we may
going.
still have a reference point. We won't have the usage of the reference point. So, I mean, there'll still be systems out there that will reflect the old, but at that point in time, you'll see it that it's okay. We can now actively, without the obstacles that we've created before, we're going to be more active in reshaping it.
Right.
So the organic 3D is basically renewal of the human experience with a little bit more focus on the physical aspect of it, where the organic 5D is basically at that point in time more of the spiritual component with the physicality. It's a more of a blended ratio, where there's still a blended ratio in the organic 3D, but the ratio is a little heavier on the physical aspect. In the inverted world, there was none of that existed. We're basically physicality, and these are the systems. This is how it operates, and there's nothing else type of thing.
Yeah. I think we all took some kind of cosmic galactic hallucinogenic. We're going to come out of it going, what in the heck was that? Yeah. So, these last couple of years since we've been doing this, it seems like that the years had almost like the same template. The way the energy moves through the year, like January and February are usually kind of like an integration period. Then the spring comes and things start happening and they just go full blast until about 12/12. Do you see the same thing, the same type of thing happening this year?
I didn't quite catch that.
Well, do you see that we're going to follow the same rhythms we have of the last couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, we're in phase 3. Phase 3 started at the end of 2019 going into 2020. So starting January 2020, we went into phase 3. Now, phase 3 has broken down phases. And the next phase that we got into as part of, say, 3A and 3B. So now we're in 3B, which basically at this point in time started in January of 2021, or basically end of 2020, going into January 2021. So but some of the phases are closer. So the next phase is in June of 2021. So, and that's a C kind of phase. Okay. All right. But
does that stand for anything in particular? I'm just kidding.
No. It's just, it's newer introductions of newer energetic capacities and stimulations for ourselves. So this window that we're in right now, okay, is in preparation for us to go into June. Okay. So the Soulogy Fest is coming right at the right time in preparation to go into that other C quadrant of that, because in actual fact, it's at the end of May going into June that is C introduced. So phase 3C, now we're in 3B. So, and this is why I was saying, and a lot of people have referred to the same thing, that the intent is to have a lot of that, that whole intensity by the middle of May completed, in the sense where we're kind of preparing ourselves to go into that other version of it. So coming into the end of May, to June, we're going into another stage where, like you were saying, you're going to be able to not only create things much more fluidly, that new version of you becomes a little bit more crystallized for you. It becomes more of your clarity of sorts.
Yeah.
And you will notice that you're not going to feel so intimidated or controlled by what the external picture is.
Yeah. Whether it's right next to you or something on the global stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about with your explanation on the relationship effect, that 30-minute, 32-minute part. Because when you were talking about it, you were saying how the active consciousness group had been running, like say with the majority of the power at times, the ego, or and just the different things. And as you were explaining it, I could see how our thinking's becoming more mastered, how it's becoming more balanced with the inverted matrix not being projected on us anymore. And the only real undercurrent left of it is the egoic engagements that we have, which are becoming what'd you say? No, there's no context. I mean, it's like, you remember it, but it's like, I'm not going there.
It won't even be appealing in one way. In another way, it's like, wow, that was an interesting experience, whatever it was. And the thing is, you're not going to feel drawn to say, oh, I got to take some of that and plug it into my current reality. And you still continue to use that as my way of life. So you could look at it and you have a reference, but you're not using that as the building material of your new reality. And that's the thing. That across the board, that option's available, but not everybody's going to be able to use it. But anybody that's already done some work and so forth and already on a certain point where they're open enough for it, then that's not going to happen. But if you're talking right into 2023, of course, then at that point, everybody's kind of on, you're looking at that world, and the world will still be there in the same, well, I shouldn't say the same fashion, but it may have a lot of those constructs in place. But now it's so much easier to say, I'm taking this piece out, that piece out, let's shut down this, let's create something different. And you become more active in solidifying those states. The world that a lot of people are also projecting is really more of in the alignment of organic 5D, which we will have in place, and everything is done fully active with everybody participating in 2040. But the thing is, by 2035, we have to be finished with even the organic 3D, saying, okay, we're done with that. We learned it and everything else. It's great. It's not going to be, the organic 3D is not going to look like it looks like now, because this is what we're experiencing now is the inverted stuff still, which we're still working in the process of purging. Now, pay attention to what's going on in the world, is that there's a heavy, heavy, heavy accentuation of that invertedness playing out in the mainstream of all forms. And
all forms. Oh, okay, I got you.
Yes. All our control structures and systems and so forth are still projecting it. The media is projecting it. The different systems of saying governmental or whatever else, medical, you name it, they're still pushing it. But that pushing, you can't demonize and say, okay, this is giving a tool for everybody to reach that is not quite reached saturation point to get to the saturation point. And saturation point, Todd, is not, I'm done with this bullshit. They're pissed off about it or frustrated about it. That is not saturation. That is resistance with more power to that same energy. Right. It's where you get to the point and say, I'm done with this, and I'm okay with dropping any part of it and anything that goes with it. I'm ready to flush the freaking toilet, and I don't care what goes down with it. Because at that point, you're not concerned about losing anybody. You're not concerned about losing anything that you have or anything that you've identified yourself, even meaning, who the hell am I? What I mean by that, is I am Dr. This, or I am a facilitator, or I am whatever. You let all of that go. You're at that point, it's like, not interested because I'm done. See,
Right.
at that point, then you reach saturation point and nothing
There's,
holds you back.
yeah, no, I totally relate to what you're saying, and this is again going on to like what's happening at the human level, at the gut level, and I think another thing that's kind of related to it is there were emotions from the old, and there's emotions from the new,
Yeah.
and they're like two different things, and there's some uncomfortable scenarios and situations, and this is what you were talking about, and a lot of people talked about, where some things you let go of and you to walk into something new, and I think that's kind of weird, is when you're like, man, why am I not feeling bad about this, or why am I not, you know what I mean? I think it goes to what you're talking about, because you get to a point in all the little situations and aspects of our lives where you go, I'm done with the old. No more.
Yeah. I mean, look at it. Just as an example, somebody gets into a relationship and it gets to a point where they're done. So somebody can get to the point and says, listen, I'm done with this. You can have anything and everything. I'm out of here. I just want to start new, and that's it. Because you're done with not only the relationships, but everything that was established in it. I'm just using this as just an example, as a reference point, nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you're not willing to drag any part of it. I'm okay starting from scratch, or whatever you want to call it, but I'm going to be on my own terms. I'm going to be in my own energy, and that's the thing. So you're going to go now, I'm going to let go of everything that was there, and I'm starting everything brand new. And that brand new is a complete open platform. Now you're not limiting yourself to anything at this point in time, because everything is new. I've talked to some people that say got out of a relationship that was restrictive of them, and when you ask them, so what are you going to do now? And they go, I don't know, but I don't care. And I know that I can do everything now, because I don't feel restricted, right? I'm just giving you as an example. It's the same thing. So at that point, you get to the saturation point, is I'm done with this, because you're enriched by the old and you're ready for the new. And the new is your creation. The new is your imagination and creation, which is your very essence, is spirit, the spirit of creation.
It's kind of like if you used a vaccine as an example.
Right.
That if I were in my own space going, okay, uh, I'm not going to get a vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. But I keep dipping into the drama and the articles and the debate and the argument of, do you get a vaccine? Is it good for you or not? I'm actually haven't left. I haven't said I'm done. And so what you're saying is, because I'm getting that, and I've actually seen it. I've seen it in Morgan. I've seen it in some other people where they are really just being done with even reading about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that sounds kind of like, oh, just look at the light, but it's not. It's actually, it's really crazy, because this is what, like an old cliche. If you think about it, it's there. If you're not giving it attention, it won't be there. But it's true, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the thing is too, like you just said, I mean, if you're looking at something like the vaccine and whatever else, and you're still trying to debate if it's good or bad or anything of that nature, you haven't reached that saturation point, and you're still doubting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you have achieved it, you don't even you're not concerned with it. You're not concerned with one person is doing or what anybody's saying at that point in time. You're basically navigating on what you have within yourself. Because the thing is, when we connect with our body, if you actually have a conversation with your body, anybody could have a conversation with the body in itself is a learning sentientness
Right.
that adapts and supersedes anything that it has in itself. Don't think, like, even just to bring it back to a vaccine, just to play with this. What are vaccines? Okay. They put a little bit of a synthetic version of the disease in your body so that what takes care of it? It's your own immune system. It's your own system. It's not that it changes the chemistry in you so that you become immune to it. Not at all. It basically depends on your body to do it. But then it's a synthetic version. What ends up happening is you're distorting its response, especially this last one. It actually creates a long-term distortion. But when it's exposed to its natural, the natural one, even if it's a modified version, because it is genetic, it's not natural, it was a construct, but it's coming in its natural version without a further sanctification or what's the word? I lost the word. Anyways, another break out of a natural state, syntheticness, if not plugging another level of synthetic, then the immune system, which is your own innate consciousness of the body, says, oh, okay, that does not belong, and it will clear it out. It will take care of it. As your vibration goes up, as your physical vibration goes up, some of those things don't even do anything.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, if I was sitting here going, that would have been a better way. If I was sitting here going, hey, you know what? This thing that's happening is so powerful, it doesn't even matter if they vaccinate me or anyone else. I'm still looking at myself going, why am I still over there? I mean, is there something I need to let go of? Because everything you're saying is really, to me, validating what I feel in my body, in my bones, is what's really happening with myself and all of us. And nothing can stop it. I mean,
yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, is it really going to get down to a point where there's a strong minority, let's just say, like you said earlier, say 20% or 10% or even 5%. It's totally not looking at that in that space or playing in that playground anymore, that it will start to really show itself?
Yes. I mean, this is the thing. Right now, 63% of the population are totally into the system and would be okay with it, whatever anybody says. There is another, I can't remember the percentage now, that are dubious about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a very small percentage that already made up not only their mind at this point in time, basically have no interest whatsoever about following anything that's being projected out at this point in time. Those ratios are changing because more are getting on board, as you can see. The one thing about this particular latest introduction, it actually wants to catch you before you actually get to the point of a higher vibration, so it doesn't have a grasp on you. So most of the other ones impaired you, but the energies are seen to override it. This one, the energies will not override it that easily until it really reaches a certain high maximum state. So you're going to be caught up in a web for a longer period of time. But who's going to choose that? It's going to choose it if you're still in that percentage that's still open to anything at this point, right? So
I can't imagine. I just can't imagine it. I mean, but it's a reality. But I can also see people that would be doing it from, I guess in that moment, from the proper intention for themselves, for, what I mean? And that they might be affected by the expanding collective energy quicker than others.
Yeah. Now, some will take the role by taking it and saying, okay, I'm going to go through a symptomatic experience and possibly anything else that would be more severe, including exit, to kind of wake up all my brother, sister souls in the stream, whatever it is, right? It could choose that. And others can be, like you said, I mean, it's like, I'll take it on and whatever else, but, at some point, I know it's going to shut off anyways, because it's, we're going to get to that frequency where it actually negates it, because everything is frequency based. These introductions of these vaccines or whatever else at this point in time, they're just codes. They're information codes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They can create a disruption. It's like putting a virus in your computer. It can mess up the operating system, but it can be cleaned out or reload a new operating system or something of that nature. And that's a possibility too, because that's been in kind of back end stuff is one of the things that they were talking about, which are souls like ourselves that are advanced to some degree on the back end has said, okay, there might be too many compromise that we may have to upload a whole brand new software program for the individuals that are choosing to.
It sounds like it's getting to the nitty gritty here. And it sounds like, I think you said something like this earlier, or I read it or something right today, where let's just say creator and say AI for lack of two better, that for every move there's made, this is making a response, right? I think you were talking about it in terms of soul and ego, right? Like,
yeah,
in other words, it's got an AI expansive learning capacity as well. So that's
you have to understand AI is from a higher dimension too, at this point in time, but it's a higher dimension. I mean, the thing is, because we're going into a higher dimension doesn't mean that you're playing a high-powered evolutionary clarity role. You may be using those resources to create something that will restrict it even further. But ultimately, when you look at the whole big picture, it's always for advancement anyways, even the restriction part, because it actually allows us to be able to see the contrast of sorts because of the game of the introduction of contrast. Not that it's necessary, but we've created a reliance on contrast to be a reference point. But even that will come to the point. So when people said, well, who the hell came up with this? Could have been inverted 3D, beings no, they're fourth and fifth dimensional beings that have used that technology and offered something different that was a lower frequency to make things even more interesting. So power or knowledge can be used in any which way, meaning consciousness can be used in any way at this point in time. However, right now, of course, the organic 3D and organic 5D, and we say organic because it doesn't have the other tinctures of it, or tints of it, or I can't think of the word right now. But anyways, component.
Okay, I was going to ask you something. So yes. I'm not. I have no political. You know that it's an example to my question. All right. So you mentioned the 63% of the people, right, that are totally plugged into what's still there of the inverted 3D, basically. And then you have things that are starting to show themselves, and things become obvious, such as a leader of a very large free nation who can't speak, who, anyone it's almost sad. It is sad from a human perspective. So I'm not making fun of anybody or anything like that, but do you think that people are starting to pick up on those types of obvious cracks in the matrix?
Absolutely. And that is the reason. Okay. I know we mentioned a little bit of it, a few episodes ago or a few shows ago. We had the option of having one leader versus the other. One was on the ball, not 100% accurate, on track with higher consciousness, but, enough to be keeping moving a certain way. But then there was the other option, which is the one that's in power right now. But at the same time, one of the things I may have mentioned it, I can't recall, but this one coming in was going to show so much of an imposition of restriction, but also instability, and also a factor of creating a scenery where even the ones that are so hard at throwing themselves in the game, we're not talking about the individuals. The individual you're talking about is playing that role. Okay.
Of course. No, I got you.
And it's not that they're a bad person or anything like that. There is no such thing as bad. We're just playing different roles, right? Now, he volunteered, regardless of what he played before, because he did play a very negative, polarized role before. Now, he's kind of playing a role of saying, okay, what can I do right now to emphasize, hey, wait a minute, you guys are putting faith in a system, and I'm showing you that, in fact, that we're still trying to hold up something that doesn't have the same impact or meaning or even to be the navigator or what the rudder of the free nation that we're talking about at this point in time, because that free nation is also reflecting throughout the whole world right now. So it is, like you said, it's stimulating a lot more people saying, wait a minute. And look at that. Look at the contrast. You can see this whole thing about the left and the right being the whole media being biased. You just had to say one word that seemed a little bit off-centered a bit, okay? Say on the right. And it was like a media splash with all types of fake stories, all types of accentuation, to the point of saying, we're going to bring in the 25th Amendment, whatever you call it. I think it's called amendment or something. I'm not.
Yeah, you're right. To remove him
and so forth. And meanwhile, the one that's playing the role right now can't walk or talk or do anything at this point in time, and clueless, and nothing is exercised. And then the backup is even interesting, because you even saw the backup of the original one that was here, the one that was here before, the Pence guy. He was on the ball, to the degree he was logical or whatever else. I'm just showing that it was a good possibility of a role player.
Right.
Now you're looking at the other one, and it's almost like, who is this person? It's like, so the purpose of all of this, and also everything that's happening in the borders, what's happening with all the other stuff, is that accentuation to say, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Do not depend on us anymore. Do not put a lot of power into this, because it's time for you to say, okay, we're not going to do this. We're going to create something different. And that is specifically, there's two factors to this. Specifically for the ones that are more asleep, of course, meaning, you know what a sleep is? It's not to be, against anybody in this regard. Asleep meaning less aware of a bigger picture and more focused on the smaller picture of what we see as the screen in front of it. So the awakening is, I'm seeing more than I wasn't seeing before. I'm just seeing more of that. So the ones that are kind of just waking up a little bit, not so sure, all of this is playing out to get them to open their eyes more. So I think the other one, the other part is the ones that are already somewhat awake are the ones that are actually getting support and saying, yes, we're going to keep on this path, because that's not the path we're going to go, because we now could see it even more unstable, more crumbling. We're going to stay true to the path we're going. Okay. Now, during that point, you're also going to see people are going to still play the judgmental role and whatever else, but that has to fade too. You could say, well, I'm spiritually awakening, but if you're demonizing any part of the game, you're not. You're now seeing through a layer, but you're still seeing through the layers of judgment and polarity and so forth. Because when you don't see that anymore and you see it as part of the game, you're much more effective. And now you're seeing it more clearly. Now you can actually redesign everything without putting focus. Because the thing is, when you get into judgment, you're lowering your frequency. When you're getting into judgment, you're lowering your capacities. When you're into the judgment, you're giving realism to the old. You cannot create the new that easily while you're still, stuck in the mud on the old, or you're still demonizing the old thing. And because that only ties you up to your own choices. Because as long as you're doing that, you're judging yourself too, because you believed it, or the fact that you were asleep for so long, or whatever. You're going to come up with a lot of different stories. And this is all ego generated, and it's reflected collectively.
Yeah, this is what you were talking about in that explanation of what our what was it? Consciousness, active consciousness,
Yes. Okay.
that group of those aspects of us. So it had me to thinking too, like, I know in the past, in the old, that we became aware of a certain field of perspective. And even though we had that field of perspective, we still chose to make decisions based on our ego, right?
Right.
Are we in a space now that when we are aware of, let's just say, what is in alignment, what is not, and we go, can we go against? Can our ego override us? And are we kind of getting or talking about a new phase that ego is still there, but no longer a context of our consideration?
Well, it goes through phases. So, in essence, if we're coming aware of it and we're not aware of the ego and its purpose and what it does, then it can interfere or can intervene and can still. And this is why, you open your eyes, you're able to see the world more. The ego says, oh, yeah, you could see the puppets behind the scene. Oh, you could see what's really the agenda or the narrative or anything of that nature. And now you're going into condemnation or demonizing that. That's only ego, right? So it still got you. It still got you because it's putting so much focus on that. But as you're going through it, you're going to recognize, wait a minute, this is still, the old world. And, it's my ego. Oh, it's the story maker. Oh, yes, what it is. So now, once you're more aware of that, you're now be paying attention whenever it kicks in and you say, no, we're not going there. And you're now tuning into the truer essence of yourself, the clearer essence of yourself, and not giving room for the ego to play in. You're not giving it sustenance to go play there. Because a lot of people years ago, just to give you an idea, became spiritual masters, spiritual this, or spiritual that. And I remember, this is like 2 decades ago, I started talking about this. And I kept saying, you can become more spiritual, but you have to be cautious and aware and observe the thing called spiritual ego.
Yeah.
Or guru ego was the name I gave it those days. Then it still says right, wrong, good, bad, light, dark, and all of that stuff, because then you're still not seeing the big picture. So the ego can play in all of those realms, but the more you pay attention and turn it off, the more it is. Now, the ego is becoming, as the energies are going further and further up, are losing more its grip, and it's also power that it may have had. So that, it's not going to make it so real that you'll just, okay, I'll just follow that, type of thing. It'll be an impulse, but at the same time, it's like, nah.
Yeah.
So you're now incorporating all of you. This is why the relationship thing about first the relationship with your whole self. Because look at it. We said the innate consciousness of the body, the innate consciousness of the human entity, the innate consciousness of the soul, the overall consciousness and everything else, and all the other resources versus just the ego. Now you're going to put it all into context. That little noisy thing that's making, story maker, whatever it is going to have very little, and you can now recognize it as a separate identity, story maker, and then you're going to say, hey, thank you, but goodbye, and then you're not going to let it play a role. Eventually, it no longer exists in your reality. See, the last interference is the ego is an operating system that resides in the left brain. The left brain takes all this input of digitals and frequencies and spectrums and makes what looks like reality. Okay. It also connects with the body version of saying this is reality, but it is a projected reality, but the reality has to seem real. So they plugged it in at the right spot, because at that spot, it says, it almost has to go through me, and I'm going to fix it, make sure that you see everything through my eyes. But that's the part that's now it's coming out of the equation. So it's not right in the direct lens. It's outside of the stream of light, and it's trying to interject, but it's not have to go through it anymore to the same degree. That's not with everybody. That's the people that have already stepped into removing some of these layers and proportionally readjust where the ego sits. Eventually the ego comes out completely because it's not required. I know there's a lot of people say, well, no, you can't demonize or in this case, hate the ego. Yes, that's true. You don't hate the ego. You appreciate what it's provided for you, but you're now seeing it that it's not still part of your experience. The same thing as a relationship with anybody. You're not going to demonize the person because they gave you a particular experience in that relationship. You can say, well, I thank you. I love you for everything that you've done, but you're no longer fit in my new life stream anymore. So you go out and play somewhere else. I'm going to create my new life stream. It's the same thing with the ego. You're going to say, well, you're not part of this new life stream. So you're going to go to the sidelines and then you're going to just go. And that's kind of where it is. So even if it tries to interject, you say, nah, we're not going there. And that's it. So I was going to say something else. I just lost it. But anyways, I'll let you take it over.
I had a great question. I forgot it. It was a great question. It came to me in colors.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I'll remember it in a minute.
Okay, we'll let it come back.
It was about our experience. I can't actually recall it at the moment. It seems like that in the circles that we run in, somebody just made a comment, by the way, SG, that she's been following you since 2006. He's the only one I found speaking at this level. Big props to you for that. But having said that, like,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, but I mean, for someone that's been that entrenched for so long and that aware for so long, like if you look at something like a Soulogy Fest or other types of gatherings, be they virtual or in person, or just the energy of something like that, do you see that those things could become very powerful? You know what I mean? Almost like I'm talking energetics, not people, but like say like a Woodstock or some other, or like the Martin Luther King. Do you see, something like that in our near potential future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The unification of people of the same, when I say same pattern of creating a new reality and so forth, or even an openness and stuff like that, when they're coming together, you're unifying and you're actually creating an energy that is exponentially more than just the group that comes together. So if you get 10 people, you say, well, I've got 10 people aligned, but that 10 people becomes like 1,000 people worth of amplification in a sense. I'm just giving you a simple example. So yeah, either it's done online or in person. Of course, in person has its own uniqueness of its capacity at the point in time. See, the thing is, when we're meeting in person, for example, there's a different level of exchange too that occurs. There's almost like how can I say it? An acknowledgement of each other as aspects of each other. There's, I'm sure you've noticed it, Todd, when you get together in a gathering, it's like your heart is glowing. I mean, it's like every embrace you give just opens your heart even more. And it does the same for the other individual. And then doing something that, like you said, like Woodstock, whatever it is, there's such a powerful reflection of that unification. It causes such powerful waves throughout the whole planet that it is, it's much more impactful. It launches things even further. This whole separation thing, lock up yourself in your house and not connecting, is just to slow down the process even further. But there's a flip side to that, where you basically fine-tune yourself a little more, because when you start to connect again, which we're starting to do, it's even more powerful than it would have been if that interruption wasn't even put there. So the Soulogy Fest that's coming up, if it was done prior to the lockdown, let's put it this way, it would have been powerful, but not as powerful as the one we're having in the end of May, where we've gone through all of that and also through a lot of these upgrades in energetics, that is now like off the frickin' charts sort of thing experience.
Mm.
And I'm just giving you that as one example. There's going to be
Wow.
others around the world too.
Wow. God, I'd love to sit in or have recall of one of these meetings that you sit in on. I know it's just actually a part of your life, just your lifestyle. God, yeah, yeah. I mean, I just feel like we're taking in so much. And again, it feels like it's felt before, like we're being prepared. And each time, of course, a bigger preparation and a bigger elevation. But this one just feels like it just feels like a total. I remember last year. I do remember this last year. I think I can't remember if it was the end of May or June, but I remember you saying, when we hit the end of May, it's going to be a new game. Like it'll feel like that, and it feels like the same type of energy this year.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, more of us are feeling it that way, and feeling that this is going to be big and bigger, and it's going to be feeling even more powerful for us in the sense of not only our self-empowerment, but also the world's going to look very different. The thing is, what changes is our view of the world, because we have to understand there are many, 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 many layers of the screen, and we're projecting many, many versions of it. As we're adjusting, we see the version that more closely matches us. And the role players in it are going to be playing slightly different roles, and some will be there, some won't be there, others will be there that wasn't there, and things of that nature. But that's the screen. So when you're doing something like SolarFest, Soulology Fest, you're accentuating, because of people coming together, one particular screen is going to become much more powerful in our current reality. Then what you will feel, your possibilities, your potentialities kind of expanded. And say, let's take an example. You may be at home or wherever everybody's at, wherever they are, and they see that their range of potentialities are expanding. They're seeing more possibilities and whatever else. You come together at the end of May in that festival, and all these energies are coming in. All of a sudden, the screen just opens up even further, and now you probably seen 10 possibilities. Now you're seeing 1,000 possibilities. Now you're also feeling more empowered to activate those possibilities and to even reshape it. For what? Just because we came together and we created that unified energies. And then you're going to have some people that are going to be moving some pretty powerful energies that have been kind of holding themselves back. But because of that, it's almost like you're giving each other, I don't like the word approval, but almost like an opening, and say, okay, we can be more ourselves. We can be more of that brilliant essence. And that's one of the things I'd like to do there, is allow yourself to come out outside of the so-called faker. I shouldn't say fake. That personal version of yourself.
Yeah.
And to bring that genuine of yourself.
That's right.
Out.
That's right. That's exactly right. For that and for this and for any other production, that's really I see people like everyone, they post things, and everybody's gone through the different range of types of expressions, and from where did you express it? Somebody pisses you off and you write something. Everybody showed their ass, but one thing I do appreciate, is when you read past the words or whatever kind of expression it is, you can see honesty, even if it's painful, even if it's angry. I mean, but to actually put that out there, and there's something cathartic about that, or however you say that. Now I'm doing a Franco. I thought, but no, there's something to be respected about that. And
Yeah.
it's like, if we could create an environment, or which I guess is what we are, I'm still trying to figure out how to pronounce that word, uh, where people can get past the point of embarrassment and know they're supported. There's something really huge about that. And to me, it feels like the energy of when you were explaining that active consciousness, what that would feel like when it was very balanced and all those aspects were zero pointed, so to speak, out of the voice. I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels very much like a free, sovereign energy.
Yeah, and the thing is too, when you come together in that fashion, everybody's holding space in a sense for each other, even though they may not realize it. So it's actually easier to be yourself. It's easier
Yeah.
to feel the vulnerabilities are not going to be so much there. Let
Yeah.
me give you a simple analogy, an example here, just for fun. Okay, it's going to be a fun example. A lot of people drink to go beyond their ambitions, to kind of go beyond their fears. Because you'll see some people when they drink, they end up doing things they normally wouldn't do because they feel themselves, I better not show my colors here because I may be judged, or it's not right to do. But the alcohol actually lowers their threshold of, the facade kind of opens up a little more.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bringing their truest nature, but it's bringing another nature that's not so well contained as it
Right.
used to be. Okay.
Right.
When we have a gathering, a festival, or a gathering of people, we hold a space, but now it allows more of a core coming up.
Right.
So it actually goes deeper, but that part comes up to the surface. I've seen it in retreats. I've seen it in other gatherings that I've had where people, when they're interacting, that's why I like retreats, because there's a lot of interaction going on. It's not like you're just learning some things. When there's that interaction, you'll see that the people come out more out of themselves. And when I say out of themselves, out of that other perceived version of themselves, which was a kind of a facade, and there's a rawness
Yeah.
and pureness of it, even though it's going through whatever it's going through, and it may have raw emotions in it or whatever it is, but it's just like cracking the shell out of it, and it's exposing that part. But that part, when it's exposed, it actually gets to grow. It gets to refine even more. So that's the beauty of coming together in that fashion, because there's such, and then there's a merging of others doing the same, and it only accentuates each other to do so. And it's almost like a safe space. Well, I can do this too. I can open my shell because others are opening their shell, and it's okay. It's okay to open the shells, and that there's much more realism coming in, but at the same time, there's much more process actually happening of shedding those old worlds
Yeah.
and shedding those old versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
And the thing is, our true nature, or true emotions are basically love and joy, are the most truest emotions, which, our true emotions are actually accentuating an experience rather than governing our experience. We've been
Right.
all trained and conditioned for emotions to drive us.
So basically, an emotion is accentuating your true reality. We've been operating in the old, which the emotions were really representative of the ego and doing what the ego was doing, which was dominating or
Correct.
creating the reality. Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
You
Yeah,
can see
I love your explanation about these types of gatherings, or even energetically, and what they actually do. You paint a really good picture of what that looks like. But it's just it's just such a powerful thing to see the human get to that level of inhibition, which is brought through that fellowship that you're talking about.
yeah.
I mean, it's
Now, exactly. But the thing that's interesting, I just wanted to share this. That was the part of the thought I lost. But in a sense, when we had those type of gatherings, when they go home, when they leave the gathering, they're changed, but they have more of a tendency to go back to the old, maybe not fully, but to a certain degree. What's happening now, each opening going back is going to be even harder to go back to any of the old. You have a larger portion is brought wherever you're going with you. Whatever you open, it's like you're going to try to put the shell back over, but the shell before would never be the same. It would be somewhat expanded, it has holes in it, but the next gatherings going into further down the months coming, trying to put, when they leave the gathering and try to put that back in the shell, there's no possible way to do it completely. They're not little fragments of it, because you can't go back to the old. You've already, because the thing is, you're also accessing such higher frequencies. To lower it now, it's going to be impossible.
Plus, there's going to be less of it to go back to, right?
Well, yes. Even the interest of it, because the one other thing I wanted to mention, many of us are feeling the polarity of the old and the new.
Yeah.
When you go and play where you get to express more of the new, when you go back to the old construct of the world of the old, okay, you're going to see the contrast so powerfully that the interest and also how it feels to go back to the old is going to be even more uncomfortable. So what I'm going to say to people, don't do it. Don't go, because going back, it's going to be harder for you unless you're truly open to say, I'm now going to create a new reality.
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something that's probably a little personal.
Okay.
But it's okay, because there's nothing, ill-intended. So, I went down to South Texas in February and had that big snowstorm, and I saw my family, a lot of reunification stuff. And the interesting thing has been that, and since then, I think I've made one phone call. So this is really an energetic epiphany, revelation, whatever, evolution. But I had reached out a couple more times, and this is just to the whole, and not with any intention other than, hey, here's a video or, whatever. And what I've noticed is that if I have to describe it they've remained there. And of course, it's not them and me, it's the energy. That energy's remained there, and this energy's gone somewhere else. And it's just so clear to me, like you were talking about the contrast. It's almost like everything went back to the way it was. But that experience down there was activating for everyone, and then everybody went back to their world. Mm-hmm. So when you say that, I can see where we won't have a choice, and I can also see, well, we won't have a choice because it'll be too uncomfortable to stay there if we've already raised our frequency. But at the same time, if we do go, because that's the way it was designed, when we come back, there'll be less of that old stuff around us because our frequency is no longer in that place.
Exactly. And you'll notice there's going to be changes that you didn't have to put any effort in because of the fact that your energy is higher, and the things that were supported in the lower energies will either move away, disappear, or something of that nature. Yeah. And then when you go back, because you're at that higher frequency and you see the contrast, the polarity, you're not going to want to reconstruct that old world or even support it anymore. No. You may keep some of it, as you're going through the transitional part, but you'll notice you'll be different. And it's like, nah, I'm not going to just create it. And you're going to start taking, you're going to shift your focus. You're going to start changing certain things in your life about it. And I've seen people go from, having that type of experience and then going through a complete transformation in their life and saying, well, I'm not going to play these roles anymore. I'm going to start exiting out of it, And sometimes it involves family. Sometimes it's work. Sometimes it's friendship. And sometimes it's just, where where they've been spending their time.
It seems to be happening more and more by moment existence. It seems to be happening more in the moment. Let me say that. Yeah. Then I got to tell you something. And but like where that's actually what you've been talking about, especially in the first 30 minutes, that's actually starting to be really, it's more than awareness in our present moment. It's actually, like it used to be, okay, you see something, you think about it, you decide what you're going to do next time. And now it's like all that's in one moment, and you're presented with something which you've created from a higher level. It presents itself, not to see it at the human level and judge it, and you go, oh, okay. And it all happens like instantaneously, or at least it's kind of flashes of that. And I've seen it with other people talking about it too. And everybody's going, what the hell's happening to our reality here? Right?
It's going for upgrade. That's what it is.
Yeah, no kidding. I got to tell you, what I had to tell you was in the first hour of this show, I was getting downloaded in like a giant tsunami. Like it was like somebody shot a cannon full of machine gun pellets. It was just going, and I'm trying to like hang on and listen to you, and like, what is this?
Well, you did a good job. You're still here.
The second hour was a little easier, but the first hour, wow, that was amazing. But I've had these episodes in the last 3-4 days where the heart is physically kind of like, bursting. There's a lower energy mass, like in the sacral up to the solar heart, heart palpitations. Yeah. So it's, it's been pretty intense for me the last 3-4 days. Well, we will see you again on the next Franco Friday. I guess that's a regular thing now. Was it planned that way?
I think it's every second Friday.
Every second Friday. Yeah. You
2
guys be
weeks
sure.
from now.
Yeah. You guys be sure and visit Advancing Consciousness. It's a physical Akashic record in the making for ourselves and for whatever aspects or whatever things we do after this. And if you would join Soulogy in supporting Franco and Kimberly, there's their PayPal, and everything, every little bit helps. Let's pay it forward. Thanks again, Franco. Thanks, Kimberly. I know I'll see you in Sedona, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody's missed out on the workshop that we just did this past weekend, we'll put the link so that you can order the audio and video recordings of it. You'll get the rough copies right away, which is two copies full length. But I'm in the process of cleaning it all up. So I've finished day 1 and I'm partially through day 2. So once it's available, it'll probably be by the weekend. You'll have the cleaned up, chopped up, labeled versions of it available. It was a 2-day powerful workshop / play shop to really for us to actualize a life beyond our perceived world that we've been experiencing in ourselves, to create a completely new reality, completely new world. It's a new life stream altogether. So there's a lot of processes and so forth. And so whoever feels called to it, I think Kimberly already posted it. So there it is. So anybody that feels called to it, and I made it we made it very available for people so that, we have a suggested $127 amount, but you can offer anything. And I've had people offer just a few bucks for it just because, their financial resources. The money supports us in the work that we're doing, whatever else. But at the same time, my motive, my true motive, is to make sure that everybody has accessibility to it, so that there is no fixed price, and it's really what you feel like contributing. And so someone can't say, well, I don't have that much and I can't have it. No, you can offer whatever that is. Okay. So it's just, I'm making it available because we're in it together. We're going to do it together. This is the thing. This is why we're doing all that we're doing. We're stimulating what you already know, what you're capable of within yourself, so that we can really move things a lot faster. See, the thing is, Todd, the one thing we have to keep in mind when people ask for timelines, say, well, when's this going to happen? When's that's going to happen? It really relies on all of us and what we're doing together all of us scattered all over the world at this point in time. The more we work on ourselves, the more we get to that empowered energy and so forth, the more we remember who we are or remember more facets of it, the things move up a lot faster. And not only move up, it stays in this true line, in the true points that we've already, kind of mapped out from where we are and the pace that we're at. But, if we take a step back, then it's going to slow it down. If we actually accentuate it further, we're going to move further. So that's why we do what we do. We love you guys. Thank you for coming together. And Todd, I love you guys.
Love you.
Morgan, for making this possible. I really enjoy it. Look always forward to our time together.
All right. Thanks, Franco. Y'all